Please join me in Gasho. Namandavats, 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 namandavats. To realize Shinjin oneself and to guide others to Shinjin is among difficult things, yet even more difficult. To awaken beings everywhere to great compassion is to respond in gratitude to the Buddha's benevolence. Namandavats, 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 namandavats. Well, good morning, everyone. Minasan ohayou gozaimasu. Wonderful to be here together with you. Thank you, Diane, for that very kind and thoughtful introduction and for your reflections. And I share in your feelings of deep gratitude for our ministers, their wives, and their families as well. I think the words that you shared kind of hit home for me, talking about being away at night and not missing sports games and things like that. So I really, it awakened my appreciation for my own wife and all that she does for our family. I'm very grateful for this topic of resilience that we're reflecting upon today, and I think that this is truly a fitting topic for our reflections and observations for Eshinni Sama and Kakushinni Sama that we observe today. I think we can't overstate their importance to this Nembutsu tradition and to the lives that we're able to live today, guided by the Buddha's wisdom and compassion, and the way in which we have a window into their leadership and their life in the Nembutsu is much in great part through the letters that were shared between the two. And we are very fortunate that we have a collection of letters that were written by Eshinni, the wife of Shinran Shonin, to their youngest daughter, Kakushinni. And these letters have been preserved and cherished down through the years to this present day, as we reflect upon the life of Shinran. And so I wanted to share some of my own appreciation of these letters and the resilience and inspiration that we can find in them as we consider our lives in the Nembutsu today. So these letters are interesting because we don't have a back and forth. We only have the response from the mother, Eshinni. We don't have the questions, but in many cases, reading the letters, the question is implied. And one of the most powerful letters of those really speaks to me to the resilience we can find in the Nembutsu in our time of grief. When a loved one crosses over to the other shore, when we find that someone who has been an important part of our family is no longer present with us, naturally we have feelings of sadness, loneliness, and perhaps even feelings of doubt and anxiety. And in one of the letters from Eshinni, we have a kind of response to this. And I wanted to share, I'll be sharing a little from some of these letters, 3 of the letters that I find particularly inspiring. And there's one letter that begins with very powerful and comforting words, and words of resilience. Eshinni writes to her daughter Kakushinni, "Let me assure you that I read your letter, dated the first day of the 12th month last year, sometime after the 20th of the same month. Above all, concerning the birth of my husband Shinran in the Pure Land, nothing whatsoever needs to be said anew." So if we think about what Eshinni is saying, she's saying, I received your letter, I heard your concerns, right? So she's listening to her daughter's concerns, and she begins by saying, above all, concerning the birth of my husband Shinran in the Pure Land, nothing whatsoever needs to be said anew. So listening to this, what do we imagine Kakushinni's letter might have been that Eshinni received? Perhaps it was a letter wondering, what happened to Shinran? What happened to Dad when he passed away? Right? Kakushinni was there with him in Kyoto when he passed. Eshinni was living at the time separated from them in Echigo, which is now Niigata Prefecture. And so we don't know the circumstances of Shinran's passing, but at the time there was a belief that those who had settled birth in the Pure Land, when they passed away, it was very peaceful. They were reciting the Nembutsu. Maybe there were, purple clouds or marvelous aromas, or all of these marvelous things had occurred. That was what we often hear in these legends or these stories of those who had realized birth in the Pure Land. Perhaps that wasn't the case when Shinran crossed over to the other shore. And so perhaps Kakushinni had this question in her mind: did Dad really realize birth in the Pure Land? To which Eshinni responds immediately, without hesitation: certainly he received birth. And how does she know this? How does she know that his birth was settled? She goes on to describe an experience that she had. She talks about Shinran Shonin's path in the Nembutsu, but then she talks about how she herself, one evening, she had a dream, a vision in which her mind was open to the wisdom of the Buddha. And in this dream, she was at a temple that was like a dedication ceremony for a large and beautiful temple. And at this temple, there were two Buddha images, similar to the Buddha statue that we have here in the Hondo. One of those Buddha images had a face that was pure light. You couldn't see any of the features. The other Buddha image had a face where the features could be seen distinctively and clearly. And Eshinni, the mother, describes how in her dream she turns to someone who's there and says, "Who are these Buddha images?" And this person she hears in the dream tells her, the one whose face is all light, that's Honen Shonin. He is the Bodhisattva of wisdom, the Bodhisattva Seishi. Right? Now Honen was the teacher whose teachings had brought Eshinni and Shinran Shonin together. Right? Then she asks, who is this other Buddha image? The one whose face can be seen distinctly. And this person who's there with her tells her, that is the priest Shinran. Zenshin is what he was called at the time. He says, that's Shinran. And he is the Bodhisattva of compassion, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. And so Eshinni then wakes up from this dream and she's sort of startled, like, what just happened, right? She had this very powerful dream, but she remembered it. She cherished it in her heart, and she never spoke to anyone about it until she shares this information with her daughter. But at one point she asks Shinran, she tells him about this dream, and Shinran says, oh yes, dreams like this are true, for we know that Honen is in our lives the Bodhisattva of wisdom. And so she receives this affirmation, this assurance that Shinran Shonin is one whose life is settled on the path to birth in the Pure Land. So whatever happens after that in their lives, she knows that this is someone who is surely to be born in the Pure Land. This is someone who I can look to as a fellow traveler, as one who will guide me on my path to awakening. And so she shares this message to their daughter Kakushinni, this message of resilience, of receiving this settled mind that we call Shinjin, this mind of peace and comfort, knowing that we've had this special encounter with the Buddha's wisdom. And so they lived together as a family, and Shinran also had a dream in which the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara had appeared to him and told him that if you should happen to marry, as Diane said, it was unheard of, right, for priests to marry and raise a family prior to that time. And the Bodhisattva appears to him and says, if you marry, I, the Bodhisattva of compassion, will adorn your life as your wife throughout your life. And so both Shinran and Eshinni saw each other as bodhisattvas. So they knew that whatever things would come up in life, they would have this relationship of supporting and guiding one another on the path to awakening. So as Diane mentioned, Shinran and Eshinni Kakushinni Sama, they lived at a time of warfare, a time of epidemic disease, a time of various kinds of challenges and social unrest, perhaps not unlike our time today. And on another of these letters, Eshinni shares an experience she has while traveling with Shinran. They're traveling together, and on this journey, Shinran suddenly starts to feel unwell. Right? He starts to have flu symptoms. Right? How would you feel, right? These days, if one of your loved ones starts to have flu symptoms immediately, oh no, right? You're rushing to the pharmacy or the hospital to get your COVID test, right? Your great feelings of anxiety and worry. Shinran Shonin then, he's lying in bed, lying down. He's not speaking at all. He's not receiving any guests. He's just lying there very still. And Eshinni describes how she hears him muttering something, and he says, this is how it will be. This is how it will be from now on. And she's listening very closely. So she hears him say this, and she asks him, "Are you okay? Are you having delusions right now?" And Shinran speaks to her very clearly, and he says, "I have been, since this fever began, I've been reciting the larger sutra continuously, so much so that when my eyes close, I can see the words perfectly clearly. Not a character is missing." So Shinran has entered into this deep kind of state of reflection and concentration, reciting the sutra over and over again, and then he realizes in the midst of this, he says, all I need is the Nembutsu. He lets go of this continuous recitation. He says, Namo Amida Butsu. It's all I need from now on. This was my foolish, vain pride, thinking that I could do something by reciting this sutra, that somehow this will bring peace of mind, when the true peace of mind is that which I receive from the Buddha. And so Eshinni hears this teaching. Think of how attentive she must be to hear her husband's muttering and mumblings and so forth, because she writes at this letter at the time, she says, I remember when this was, because our son was at the time 4 years old. And by the Japanese way of counting, he was 3 years old. So they're traveling with a toddler, right? A 3-year-old. Can you imagine, right? All of the, the activities and things I think about when I travel with my wife. We haven't traveled in a while, but when we used to go someplace, it's all hands on deck, especially with a toddler, right? You're constantly, okay, where's the kid? What are they doing? What are they getting into? Somebody's got to carry the diaper bag, and who's got the food, and all of these different things. So they're traveling with a toddler. Her husband becomes sick. He's in bed with a fever. What does she do? She's there, listening to him, caring for him, but also with an open mind, attentive to what he's doing. And she receives this message that in these times of difficulty and disease and uncertainty, all we need is Namo Amida Butsu. And she receives this great peace in her heart, this peace of Shinjin. So in these letters, we hear her. She's sharing the peace that she receives from her settled mind in the Nembutsu. But she's also encouraging her daughter. These letters are a message to her daughter, passed down for all of us to receive now, that in the times of difficulty, we can turn our ears to the Nembutsu. This is all we need. We have our good companions who are our guides and our supports. Towards the end of her life, she writes a letter to Kakushinni, and it's a letter where she expresses her own feelings of loneliness. She says, I long to see you and to see your children. She's a mother and a grandmother. She's living far from her children. She's separated. She's not able to see her grandkids regularly, right? I think, we've experienced that ourselves in the past year and a half. where, for a long time, before any of us were vaccinated, we were not able to meet with our children or our grandchildren. I myself haven't seen my own grandmother in a couple years, looking forward to going to visit her over the winter break. My parents weren't able to come visit our kids for about over a year and a half actually. There was a gap. And so we are experiencing this separation, this loneliness, and we're reminded, reading Eshinni's letter, that this is something that has been experienced by generations down to the present for hundreds of years, this feeling of separation from loved ones. And in the midst of that sadness, because surely Kakushinni longed to see her mother, longed to bring the children to the grandmother. I think that's been the greatest challenge in our family, because my mother-in-law lives in Japan. My wife hasn't been able to see her. You can chat online and call up on the phone, but it's not the same as being together. So we experience this today. And Eshinni, she says to her daughter, she encourages her, she says, say the Nembutsu. Say the Nembutsu, for we will be born together into the Pure Land of Amida Buddha. Everything will be bright. There will be no darkness in that world. So let us journey together on this path to awakening. Find strength and resilience in the Nembutsu. Eshinni shares this message with us through Kakushinni, who cherished these letters and passed them down for us. This message of awaken Shinjin, awaken this great entrusting for ourselves, and guide others to take refuge in the Buddha. And this is our way to show our appreciation for the Nembutsu that we have received, to live a life of peace, to live a life of strength in the midst of the challenges, to appreciate that our lives are settled on this path to awakening, and that all those from whom we are separated, our lives are sharing a common destination in the world of peace and bliss, the world of awakening. And even if we're unable to meet in this world, that we do come together in oneness as we enter into the world of the Buddha's peace and bliss that we call the Pure Land of Amida Buddha. And so we observe this service today to recognize and show our appreciation for Eshinni and Kakushinni, who have crossed over to the other shore and continue to be our guides from the world of awakening in this world that we live in today. So I'm truly grateful to all of you that we've been able to spend this time together in the Hondo. It's a wonderful and truly meaningful occasion to gather today as we remember these ladies, these wonderful Dharma teachers who made the Jodo Shinshu tradition possible, the builders of the Kakushinni who built the first temple, the first site for remembrance for Shinran Shonin, which is the basis for our Honganji and our Jodo Shinshu temples. And so to observe and gather as we come back into this sacred space, remembering their lives and their wish for all of us to receive this great peace of mind through entrusting in Amida Buddha. So I'll conclude my reflections at this time. I'm truly grateful to all of you for being together with us today in the Hondo. I invite you to join me in Gansho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namam Dabutsu. Namam Dabutsu. Namam Dabutsu. Namam Dabutsu. Namam.